I started to understand what it meant for my community here, for all the Moroccans who live in the UK, or other British Moroccans like myself.
Miraculously, you started repping Westminster in the Buckingham Palace.
People are quite happy that change has happened. Everything that the older people choose will affect us.
I think also a problem with youth nowadays is that we don't want to try.
When I became Lord Mayor, it was the first time ever in Westminster. And sometimes you feel more Moroccan and sometimes you feel more British.
How people are sometimes not taking youth seriously enough.
I'm not here by luck, I'm not here by chance. I earned my position. They sent me downstairs, maybe they don't want me here.
You took all the attention.
I took everything, so I was a little bit spoiled maybe. The Queen's funeral was a massive once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, once-in-a-lifetime event. They know what Muslims need. They know we need halal food. They know we need a prayer space if it's time to pray. They understand that, which I think is quite nice actually. It's quite good. That in Islam, prayer isn't optional. Salah is it's not a choice. It's fard. It means you have to do it.
Assalamu alaikum and good evening. A warm welcome to our wonderful audience watching, and thank you for joining us again for another episode of حدثنا. Today, I'm your host Sarah Diab, and I'm truly excited to have you with us for what promises to be an engaging and insightful conversation. Today, our guest is truly special. He's Hamza Tazal. Hamza Tazal is a British Moroccan politician that's making waves in British politics. And get this, at just 22 years old, Hamza became the youngest and the first ever Muslim Lord Mayor of Westminster, breaking odds and barriers for young people and minority communities in British politics, making him the perfect role model for those striving to create change within their communities. Truly inspiring. So let's delve more into this conversation with Hamza. Thank you for joining us today at the studio. And I guess the first question that has to be asked is, how are you feeling and how are you?
Thanks for having me. I'm doing all right. I think it's been a busy couple of months, especially with work and all the elections we've had in the UK. But it's settling down a little bit. I'm feeling okay, alhamdulillah.
You've mentioned a couple of times that you're born and bred in Westminster, and it's something that you're actually really proud of. Can you tell us a bit about memories that you've had in Westminster, and how have those memories shaped your ambitions?
Wow, that's a big question. I think for me, Westminster has always been my home. It's always been my family's home, whether it's my mother or grandparents or uncles or aunties or cousins. We're all born and raised in Westminster. The majority of us are, apart from some of the older ones who were born in Morocco. My mother was born here in Westminster, in London. So for me, it's always been home. I never saw it. A lot of people, when they think of Westminster, they think of a very wealthy, a very rich, the middle of London. They think of Big Ben, they think of Parliament, they think of Trafalgar Square, and they don't see all the residential aspects of it. Like, a lot of people live in Westminster. We have about 250,000 residents who live their normal lives in central London. So for me, growing up, I felt quite lucky because everything I could need or could want was in the area, as in, whether it's shops, whether it's my school, whether it's my primary school, secondary school, nursery, everything was sort of 2 minutes away from me. If I wanted to go to do a bit of shopping, go down to Oxford Street, again, about 10-15 minutes away. It's a privilege to be able to grow up where I've grown up. And I think it was only when I was a little bit older that I began to really appreciate it. I think growing up, you acknowledge it, but you don't take it too seriously. You think you just live in London. You don't think of it in terms of Westminster or Brent or Camden, or it's different boroughs. You just think you live in London. It was only when I sort of slightly got a bit older that I started to realise I live in the city of Westminster. I live in the heart of London. I think my childhood was brilliant. I think the estate I grew up in, Liston Green, had everything that I could need. The friendships I made, the activities I carried out, everything was there. And it feels like I'm not old. I'm only 25, but it feels like a long time ago sometimes.
So, from hearing your answer, would you actually recommend people moving to Westminster and just staying there for their whole life? And is it that convenient?
I think it is. I think that anything you want is in Westminster. You genuinely do not have to leave the borough to do the thing that you want to do in life, essentially. don't get me wrong, travel, explore, but for me personally, I don't think I'd live anywhere else. I don't think I'd ever see myself moving out of Westminster. It has everything I could possibly want and need. And most importantly, it has my family. My family all live sort of close to me as well.
So, you're also from Moroccan origin. You're ethnically Moroccan, and I guess I wanted to ask, how has that move from Morocco to Britain influenced your life or changed your life in any way?
I think for me, and I'm speaking from the perspective of a sort of second and a half generation Moroccan. So my grandparents came to the UK in the early 70s. So my mother was born in the UK, as I mentioned earlier. My father was born in Morocco, and aunties and uncles sort of half. But for me, it's being Moroccan has always been part of my identity. It's always been a part of who I am. Whether it's going to Morocco on holiday, whether it's going back to see family and friends, whether it's having Moroccan tea at home. It could be absolutely anything. It's part of who I am. I think growing up, I felt like part of a bigger community. It wasn't just my Westminster community or my London community. It was part of the Moroccan community. So for me, growing up, it's even the language, being able to speak the language at home, being able to speak to my grandparents, being able to speak to my family in Arabic, in Moroccan Arabic. It's just been a wonderful addition to my life, and I'm quite happy, quite glad. I always say I'm very lucky to be of Moroccan heritage, or to be Moroccan. That's how I describe myself. I describe myself as, I don't know, sometimes I say British Moroccan, sometimes it's Moroccan, sometimes it's just British. It's interchangeable. For me, it's not a set thing. If I'm in Morocco, I'm Moroccan. And if I'm here, maybe I'm a bit of both. It can be anything, to be honest with you.
Amazing. So a world citizen, in other words.
Yeah, pretty much.
And have you find it difficult to integrate your Moroccan identity into your professional life?
I think I've been quite lucky in terms of the political world, and it wasn't always like that. I think when I started, being Moroccan wasn't when I was first elected as a councillor, being Moroccan wasn't the standout thing. It wasn't a buzzword. No one really cared. It didn't. In a way, maybe it's good. It didn't bother anyone. It was a normal thing to be of a different background and have different heritage. I think when I became Lord Mayor, that's when I guess the Moroccan world opened up a bit more for me personally, and I started to properly understand what it meant to be Moroccan. I started to understand what it meant for my community here, for all the Moroccans who live in the UK, or other British Moroccans like myself. I finally began to understand what that heritage meant, and I guess it's only sort of with time was I able to progress and process all of that. So it's just I don't know. I think for me it's I like to think of it as a privilege to be Moroccan, but it's never negatively impacted me in my work. It's never put me off or put me down. If anything, it's helped push me up and push me higher.
Amazing. And how are the people's reactions to you being, a bit different, being British Moroccan? Have they put you down?
Well, when I became Lord Mayor, it was the first time ever in Westminster where we had a Lord Mayor from a minority ethnicity. So it tends to be that the Lord Mayor is a white, English, British person, or a woman. It could be a man or woman, it doesn't matter. But they're always white and British. This is the norm. So for them, when they first announced me, not only was I shocked, but the rest of the country was shocked. It was sort of, how can a young, forget the Moroccan aspect, sometimes the youth aspect was a big thing for them. How can someone so young become Lord Mayor? But apart from a few sort of online people and that sort of thing, people are quite happy that change has happened, especially locally, because the communities that we represent are very diverse communities. They're very busy communities. They're people from all over the world. So when they see that someone from a diverse background has able to be elected or to able to reach this position, it shows them that other people in the future can maybe follow. Because once you've broken the ground, that's it. It's open up for anyone else to try and give it a go. So it's there were some older people were shocked and thought, British Moroccan, I don't know, but the majority was quite positive. So I'm quite privileged in that sense.
Amazing. And you've mentioned, I think, something really important about how people are sometimes not taking youth seriously enough. And I guess I want to question on how do you think people should change their opinions or their outlook on youth becoming, achieving such high things?
I think if a young person has achieved something, it's because they've earned it. It's not because they've been placed or born into it or done this or done that, especially in the political world. Don't get me wrong, there are some people who are very wealthy, they were born into power, their children follow them, etc. But when you see a young person from a local estate, from an inner London borough, who's able to achieve something, it sounds a bit weird, it sounds like I'm bragging. I'm not bragging about myself, but when you're able to become Lord Mayor at the age of 22, and you've grown up in Lisson Green Estate, which is an area of extreme levels of poverty, extreme levels of crime, lots of big problems. Don't get me wrong, I love it, it's my home, but it has issues that need to be sorted out. To become Lord Mayor from that is a massive achievement, and it's something that I hope, and I look back at it and I hope that I earned. I wasn't just placed there for the sake of it. I earned my position. And for a lot of young people who get into politics, who get involved in politics, there's a lot of other people who try to, like you said, to push them back, who try to think, oh, they're too young, their opinion doesn't matter, their opinion isn't valid. But at the end of the day, it's the future that they're going to live in. The world, everything that takes place is surely for them, it's for the next generation. If you look at any big world event, it's young people who are pushing the fight, it's young people who are passionate about topics, it's young people who are trying to make that change. So it's never a thing to let people push you down purely because of your age. And it was a little bit tricky when I became Lord Mayor. There were some people who were sort of... There was a lot of older people sometimes. I would go to events as Lord Mayor and representing Westminster, and they would sort of comment about my age, and it would be like, oh, you're too young, like, aren't you too young to do that, or what have you learned so far? Like, really patronising sometimes and talking to you like a kid, like you were 5 years old. But once you overcome that initial stage, then you realise you belong there. And that was the process I took when I became Lord Mayor. And it was towards the sort of halfway point, or maybe towards the end, when I realised I earned this. I'm not here by luck, I'm not here by chance. I earned my position. But yeah, so that's sometimes how they treat young people.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think views towards young people should change, and we should strive for that change. Yeah. And then I wanted to go back to talking about your family, and I wanted to ask, are you inspired by any of them, and have they influenced you heavily in the achievements that you have made?
Yeah, so for me, I always had three people in my life who would, I guess, the catalysts of everything. They're the ones who always pushed me. They're the ones who in a good way, they're the ones who always said to me, Hamza, do this. Hamza, why didn't you go for this? Why didn't you try this? And they encouraged me. They were my support group. And that was my grandmother, my mother, and my auntie. So I always say it was three women in my life. Three powerful women who always pushed me. And now I'm married as well, so four powerful. The fourth one has just joined the team now. Those three, my grandmother, mother, and auntie, from the very beginning, they were always there for me. So I'm the oldest grandchild, so I'm the first grandchild in the family. So I mean, I spent a lot of time just me and the family. Basically, there was no other children around. It was just me, and maybe a little bit spoiled. And they used to look after me. You took all the attention. I took everything, so I was a little bit spoiled, maybe. But it was, my grandmother would always push me to do something. She'd always give me that positive energy. She'd always tell me to do this, always believe in myself. My mother was always there, and my auntie was always there for me as well. And without them, I wouldn't be here today. It's that simple, it's that straightforward.
Amazing. I think, so in a sense, you would agree that these women have played a huge role in your political journey.
100%. 100%.
Going on from that, how were you able at such a young age to mentally prepare yourself for the achievements that you have made?
It's a brilliant question. I'll take it in two steps. So my first big achievement was when I was first elected as a councillor. So this was back in 2018 now, so about 6.5 years ago. It was May 2018. But I got selected as a candidate, because how it works, you have to be selected before you have to be chosen as the candidate before you go to election. So I was selected in 2017, and I think at the time it was just before I turned 18, so I was still 17. Obviously, you have to be 18 to be elected, so I had to wait obviously until the election when after I turned 18 to actually stand. And for me, it was, and I look back at it, and it's bringing a lot of memories. But it was very different to how it was the second time. I was still 18. It was still fresh to me. I was still learning things. I still needed to understand how to cope with work. I was only at my first year at university, so I was still studying. So I was counsellor and I was studying. These were my two roles. The second time was when I was 22, and just before the year I became Lord Mayor. And in terms of mentally preparing for that, as I said, I only had a week and a half. There wasn't much. People have months normally to prepare for a big job like Lord Mayor. But because I'm a Labour councillor, so because Labour won the election in Westminster, it meant everything changed. Just literally just flipped on its head. Every single thing changed. The whole building changed, and it meant that we were now in charge and we had power in Westminster. But in terms of mentally preparing, for me, it was all about thinking, what's my next step? What's my next event? What's my next job to do? What's my next role? What's my next person I'm going to speak to? I didn't really like to plan too far ahead. I like to take the day as it comes. So if I had a very busy day where I had 4 or 5 engagements, I'm not worried about the ones in the evening. I'm going to take the first one. I'm going to get that done. I'm going to move on to the second one, get that done, third one, etc. Because I think sometimes you can get bogged down a little bit. You can get held down when you start stressing about things that are in the future or things that you don't have any control over. But like I said, it was. I think it was easier towards the second half of being Lord Mayor. First half, I felt, and I was very busy. Lots of things going on. You have to adjust quite quickly. But every time I speak to my team, my old team back at the office, they always say you adjusted straight away. For them, they saw it as immediate. But for me, I think it took a little while before I was 100% comfortable as Lord Mayor. But in terms of mental preparation, you just have to take it as it goes. There's no point of worrying about what's going to happen next week or the week after. Just take it as it goes.
And is that your advice for example, university students who are trying to balance 2 careers, their degree and their life?
Yeah, I would say and I always say the same. It's always the same advice, whether it's a child or a teenager, or if I can advise adults, even adults, it's don't try your best not to stress. Because stress is the thing that takes you down. Stress is the thing that will flip you over. Stress is the thing that will put you off doing so many things and sort of excelling at your life. And just take things as they go. If it's meant to be, it's meant to be. That's my sort of life. That's what my mum says to me. That's my sort of motto. And we always say it's qadar Allah. If He wishes it, it's going to happen. So there's no point of stressing about something that's not in your control. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen.
And you grew up on a council estate, and then miraculously you started repping Westminster in the Buckingham Palace. So how was that? Tell us all about it. It genuinely seems so surreal.
It was, and that was the word I used quite a lot when I was Lord Mayor. It was 2 different worlds. It was 2 very different worlds. From the world I was working in to the world I would go home to in the same day was a completely different world. And there were some events, especially the ones at the palace, where I would go to them and I would see all the sort of the lavish, the flashy, all the gold, all the jewelry, all the designs, all the expensive silverware, goldware, whatever you want to call it, all the people dressed up, all the diplomats, all the royalty. And then I go home to my estate and I think it's 2 different worlds. By the way, they're not far. It's like 15 minutes. It's like 15-20 minutes maximum. But it took a lot. There was 1 or 2 times where I did pause and I sort of thought to myself, how can it be so different? Because for me, it's all about how do we push people up? How do we get the people from the estate? How do we get them to succeed in life? How do we get them to do well? How do we push them up? Social mobility? How do we push them? And sometimes I would go to events and I'd think the gap is too big. It's not. It's how do we do this? But then I'd be at the event and I might meet someone and I'd meet one person who's maybe not from a dissimilar background, but who started off sort of a normal life and is now a very senior figure. And that would give me a little bit of encouragement, because then I'd think, okay, there are some other people like me who are out there. There's some other people who've been successful, who've made it. But how do we now bring that back to the community? How do we bring that back to Listen Green? How do we bring that back to Church Street? And how do we help elevate our own people? Because for me, it's not about just me going higher and higher. It's how do I bring the people with me? How do I bring my community with me? How do I help improve our standard of life, essentially? But there were definitely some really cool events at Buckingham Palace, which I'm happy to go into detail for if you'd like. But some of the Buckingham Palace events were really, really nice.
Go ahead, give us your top memory.
Oh, top memory. There was maybe two. So there was one. It was actually, there's more than two. There's quite a lot. So now that I think about it, so I had 3 big events. So we had Platinum Jubilee, which was just outside the palace, and they had a reception in the palace beforehand, actually. And that took place for the Queen's 70th anniversary on the throne. So it was 2022. And this was maybe a month after I became Lord Mayor, maybe less than a month. And I took my auntie, I took my mother, I took my friend, I took my colleagues in the council. I took different people. Throughout the year, I used to try and take different people with me to show them this is what we do as Lord Mayor. Because not a lot of people know what the Lord Mayor does or what the Lord Mayor's role is. But the Jubilee was an amazing thing, because it was the first time I was thrown into that world properly. And I remember, I always tell people the story, but I had my ticket and we were sitting in the royal box. So the royal box is where the royal family sit. And I think my row, it said, I don't know, it said H or something. It said row. So I thought it was at the back. I thought, okay, I'm at the back. I'm important, but I'm not that important. So they put me at the back because the royal family are on the front. And then just before I left the Buckingham Palace, and a lady came to me and said to me, are you the Lord Mayor? I said to her, yeah. And she said to me, here's your new tickets. I said to her, oh. And I thought I was in trouble. I thought, oh, maybe I got pushed back. They sent me downstairs. Maybe they don't want me here. I don't know, that was my mind at the time. I was very nervous. I was sort of very worried. And then I saw the ticket, and I think it said row B. And I said, oh. I was thinking, is row B from the back? So it's A, the back, and sort of the higher the letter, the better you're seated. But no, I went in, and there was 2 rows at the front. And on the front, you see the little name tags, and it would say HRH, 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 which obviously His Royal Highness, Her Royal Highness. At the time, I didn't add it up, so I thought, who's HRH? I thought, who is that? And then I sit down, and I turn around, and I see the Prime Minister's behind me. And I think, okay, it's good seats, pretty good seats. Then I look again and I see the Mayor of London behind me, a couple rows back. And I see other government ministers and like really important people.
Behind you?
Behind me. So I must be more important than them, is what I'm thinking at the start. And then I sit down and then I see the princesses and other princes. They come out and they're sitting beside. And I'm thinking, damn, seriously? No, it's pretty cool. And then William and Charles, obviously, who's king now, they all come out and they sit literally right in front of me. And even William and Kate's younger daughter, and she would turn around and wave at us, and like literally, like sort of, it was unreal. I couldn't believe it. I thought, is this where I am? And I remember when I finished after, I saw all the messages from people saying, we saw you on TV, we saw you on this, we saw you on that. That was one big event. And then the other two, quickly, it was a sad one, but the Queen's funeral. The Queen's funeral was a massive, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, once-in-a-lifetime event. And I had the privilege of taking my mother with me. So my mother went with me to Westminster Abbey, and we were there for the Queen's funeral. This was a massive setup, absolutely huge. And the final thing, just before I finished, was the coronation. So the King's coronation. Again, that's a once-in-a-lifetime event. And I was sat right at the front again, so I could see everything that was happening. I was very worried about where they're going to put me. But no, it all worked out very well. And that was those were the 3 big events. But there are even the small events, when you go to a school or a community hall and you talk to residents and you show the kids all the gold, you show them the robes, they love it. And that's what being Lord Mayor is really about, to be honest with you.
It's amazing. And I guess the most important question here is, did you like the food there?
Yeah. Food is brilliant. I have to say that. No, it's the food is good. No, they're very good at catering to different palates and halal food, which I was very surprised. Well, because they are. So that was another big thing, and I'll sort of go off on a tangent a little bit. But I was worried. I said, is there going to be halal food? Obviously I'm Muslim. I need halal food. But the palace is very catering. Absolutely no problem. Didn't question me once. And there was a lot of events were absolutely fine. There were some events, like not at the palace, other events that I went to, where they were a bit funny, and they would say to me, "Oh, we can only bring you fish." I said to them, "I don't want fish. I want chicken." I said, "I want halal chicken." And then they would say, "Oh, we can't do that. Impossible." And I say, "Oh, come on." So there were some events that was a bit dodgy, but for all the big events, they know how to cater, they know what to do. And Muslims are very integrated now, so they know what Muslims need. They know we need halal food. They know we need a prayer space if it's time to pray. They understand that, which I think is quite nice actually. It's quite good.
I think that's the true spirit of Britain, honestly.
Yeah.
I think along the years they have truly changed, and I think for the better.
Yeah.
And I guess you've been a advocate for youth opportunities, a prominent one too, not only just advocating from time to time, you're prominent about it. I guess why are you advocating for youth opportunities?
For me, it's, and this is sort of going back to when I grew up, but young people never seem to have a say. They never seem to have a choice. They're always told what to do. Their opinions are taken for granted. They're not taken seriously to begin with, in all honesty. And a lot of that time that got me annoyed, it got me kind of upset, it got me a bit angry at times, because it didn't make sense. Why can't we have an opinion? Why can't we make a difference? Why can't we make a change? Why do we always have to rely on people who not only are older than us but can't relate to us? They're not from the same estate, or they're not from the same background. They don't have the same heritage. They don't understand the issues that we face. Yet we're meant to listen to them and take it for granted. And that's, I guess, what got me involved when I was 16 and I joined the youth parliament, which we have in the UK. And I was elected as a youth member of parliament for Westminster. And that was a sort of big trigger, and that's why I went for it, because for me it was, and I said this earlier in the conversation, everything that the older people choose will affect us. You look at Brexit in the UK, for example. That vote took place in 2016, I think it was. I couldn't vote. I was too young. I wasn't 18, so I couldn't vote. But who does it affect? It affects us, the younger generation. Now we can't travel the way we wanted to. We can't study in places we wanted to. Can't live in places that we could have wanted to. And this is all because our government chose to do something. It's slightly tricky, and it's sort of the imbalance. Even votes, I always advocate for votes for 16-year-olds. I think people at the age of 16 should be able to vote. They can do lots of other stuff in life. They can join the army, they can go and study, they can get a job. So why not be able to vote? And it's that sort of imbalance that I've always tried to change. And it's only with young people having better opportunities in life and actually being given those opportunities and taking those opportunities that they'll be able to adapt and improve and make a bit of noise and make a bit of change. Because that's what you need. You need a movement. You can't have just one or two people. You need everyone to be involved to make a proper change.
Okay, so what would you respond to people that might criticize this opinion and say that, 16-year-olds are not mature and can't be held accountable or can't make such big decisions?
Well, I'd put it on its flip side, and I'd say, then I'm not going to say a certain age, but people of a certain age shouldn't be able to vote either. Because they're not capable, they're not coherent, maybe they don't understand. And then you get into a really worrying argument, because then what about this group of people? What about this group of people? You can go on forever. There's always different groups of people you can argue. Maybe you don't vote or aren't able to vote or all that. But we have rules in place, we have legislation, there's legalities that surround elections and how people vote and who's able to vote. But even now, there's the previous government, and not to get too political, but the Conservative government, when they put in voter ID, so you have to show your ID when you go to vote, they've accepted an older person's bus pass, but not a younger person's bus pass. So if you have an 18 plus but Oyster, they can't accept it. If you have a 60 plus or 65-year-old plus Oyster, they accept it. So it makes no sense. But it's just them discouraging young people to participate democratically. It's them saying they don't want people to be involved in politics. They're happy with the status quo. So yeah, that's what I would say to those who don't think young people should be able to vote.
Honestly, that's an amazing counterpoint. I think if you were in a debate, you would have won that point.
Thank you.
I guess also staying along the line with youth and younger generation, if you were right now in front of your younger version, what message would you give your younger self?
Oh, good question. Oh, what message would I give my younger self? For me, it would be the same advice I'd give to other people. I'd say, Hamzة, don't worry. Just don't. I think I used to stress out quite a lot when I was younger. I'm slightly more laid back now, but when I was younger, it was very stressed. It was stress trying to do things, trying to make sure everything works out. Just normal work, normal university, trying to balance everything. It was a lot of stuff to do, and with that, stress builds up. So I would tell myself, don't worry, it's all going to be okay. Yeah, there'll be difficulties in life, but that's life. That's how things are. We grow and we learn. We move on, but things will work out in the end. And since then, a lot has happened. And that's why I say to people, you can never really plan. You can never really plan. You can try to plan, but you can never really plan. And it always amazes me when I speak to some people, and this is completely irrelevant, but I thought I might as well say it. But when some people, they book like a holiday, and they book it like a year in advance. For me, that's crazy. That's really odd. It doesn't. How do you know what's going to happen from now to a year? It's bizarre, but there's a lot of people who do that. Or even weddings. People book weddings, and they'll book it for next year, like the end of next year, and it'll be like, how on earth do you know what's going to happen from now to next year? My grandmother used to always say to me, and I don't want to say it in Arabic because I don't think I can pronounce it properly. She said to me, hit the iron when it's hot. That was the phrase in Arabic. It was hit the iron when it's hot. Meaning, if you have the opportunity to do something, do it. Don't wait. There's no point of waiting. Obviously, iron, if it cools down, then you can't change it. It's done. So that was the phrase my grandmother would always say to me, and that applies to me in every bit of life. Every bit of life. And the more you delay things there, or you don't plan for it, it's unlikely it's going to happen. Even with the most basic of things, this is completely irrelevant, but it just linked to my point. If I was going to, let's say you go to the store and you find, I don't know, a nice t-shirt or a nice top or something that you want to wear. And let's say there's, for me anyway, I don't like going shopping too much. So if there's two that maybe different colour or they're similar style, but I like them both and they both fit me and they're nice, I try and grab them both, because otherwise I'm gonna have one, it's gonna get damaged, and I'm gonna forget and say, I should have bought the other one. Or even like with shirts, maybe that's a better example. Don't just buy one shirt. You're gonna get them to last. That's the aim. And it's the same with opportunities in life. When he told me he wanted to be Lord Mayor, I told him straight away, absolutely, no problem. I'm not gonna let him wait and maybe change their mind. No, it's done. That's for me. That's how I live my life. I try to anyway.
So in other words, we should seize the opportunity.
Exactly. That's a much better way to put it. Yeah, seize the opportunity. Why when you're in the moment, just grab hold of it. Otherwise, who knows what's going to happen.
Perfect. You've mentioned that previously. You've mentioned, and even in this podcast, you've mentioned that you want or you strive to create or bridge between the affluent communities and the less fortunate communities. And I guess the question then is that actually possible?
It's a brilliant question. I think it is with time. Now, just talking from personal experiences, so the area I live in is Church Street. It's in the top 10% of most deprived wards in the UK. It's extremely high levels of deprivation. The ward I represent as a councillor is called Queen's Park. It's a similar situation. It has extreme levels of poverty and deprivation and occasionally crime. But there isn't, and I think we get bogged down a little bit on the negatives too much, and we talk about the bad stuff. these are brilliant areas. These are areas full of life. These are areas where generations have lived. In Church Street, we've got a street market that takes place every day. On Saturday, we have a nice big street market. It's one of the very few places left in London that has a traditional street market. The community there is extremely diverse. It's extremely friendly. You have primary schools, secondary schools, hospitals, GPs, parks, football pitches. Everything you could want is in these areas. But then when you see them on the news, you only hear the negative stuff. And I think that sometimes affects how quick social mobility, social mobility can take place or work out. It's what can we, the gap, and this is what I've seen over the years, the gap is huge. The gap is ridiculously huge. But in London, more than anywhere, it's quite obvious and it's quite blatant. So you'd have a wealthy street facing the council estate, and it would be houses here go for 3 to 5 million, and then houses here are just council flats, still go for like 500k, or still a lot of money. Don't get me wrong, it's not affordable for anyone, but it's that sense of I saw, and this is throughout my years, especially doing a lot of youth work, is when I spoke to a lot of young people, the ambition sometimes, to no fault of their own, the ambition isn't there. You say to them, what do you know? And I use this example quite a lot. When I was younger, I say when I was younger like I'm really old. When I was slightly younger, and your teacher would say to you, what do you want to be when you're older? A lot of kids would say, I want to be a nurse, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a fire person, I want to be a police officer, I want to do this, I want to do that. Nowadays, it's not like that, unfortunately. Kids don't know. They just don't know what they want to be. And that's why we have a cycle where the ambition isn't there, the drive isn't there. And the young people, they grow up, and it's the same thing. As they grow up, they end up on the estate, they see what their older brother or sister did. It's the same cycle. There isn't a pattern. They don't have belief in getting a proper normal job. They don't have that idea. The ambition is gone. It's not there. They don't believe in having a normal family life in terms of getting married and settling down and having kids. That's not in their. It's not in their mind. They're not allowed to think that far because they haven't gone past the first step. They don't know what the aim is in life. They don't know what their passion is. So for me, it's about how can we explore that? How can we do things with our young people? How can we get them to do things they want? And again, it's never. I'm not blaming the young people. It's not their fault at all. It's the environment they've grown up in. Maybe it's the local authority. Maybe it's the government. Maybe it's their fault. Maybe that's how things are. So it's what can we do to actually push that and say to young people that this is an opportunity, grab it. Especially in Westminster, we have absolutely everything. Anything people want us to do, we have. So how do we make those opportunities available to our young people, and not people coming from elsewhere in terms of very wealthy people or people from a very affluent background? We need to help our own local young people.
And how do we solve that? How do we make kids or youth think wide or big?
It's a big question. I think it's all about giving them something that they enjoy and letting them run with it. It's seeing what their passion is. It's finding out, maybe it's art, maybe it's music, maybe it's fashion, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. What can we do to help facilitate that young person in their growth? A lot of the time the schools are very focused on the academic side. It's very, who can get the highest grades, who can get this, who can get that. And they often neglect those who aren't academically sort of astute, those who can get the high grades. Those who get the high grades, fantastic, brilliant, well done, good job. But then all the others are left behind, and that's what it feels like sometimes. So it's what can we do to explore those other avenues for success? You can be successful if you're a fashion designer. You can be successful if you're into the music world, maybe as a producer or something like that. You can be successful as a carpenter, as a woodworker. There's other industries that people can be successful in, and it's trying to find that passion and figure out what can people do to make a good living, to make a good amount of money to live on, to have a good life, to find their own home. But then housing is another issue. The price of housing in London, in the UK, is outrageous. It's no normal person can afford to buy a house. So that's then become dependent on the government system. That's just the cycle of how things are. I can't afford to buy a house. It's crazy. It's crazy money. It's really, really honestly bizarre. But it's little things like this that when people grow up, they they don't even want to think about, because they know it's not possible, so they try not to think about it. But yeah.
And why is it important to have such tough conversations like this?
Because if you don't, then no one, it's sort of it's an old phrase, but no one's going to have the conversation if you don't do it. They say if you want to do something, you do it yourself. That's the best way in life. And for a lot of young people, especially my friends, I sort of really push them and say to them that, like, do this, apply for this, go for this, try, just try. But they're very worried that it's going to be a rejection. They're very worried that they're not going to make it, and they'd rather not apply just to not have any form of rejection or failure, because it's so ingrained into our minds growing up. Don't fail, don't do this, don't do that. They always tell, everyone always tells us, don't be a criminal, don't be a drug dealer, don't be. It's always it's like the crazy negative stuff. That's not in our. Just because we live in an estate doesn't mean we're going to become criminals or drug dealers. But that's the narrative that was pushed for quite a long time. And the one thing we were missing is telling us what we can do. You've told us what we can't do. So what can we do? What can we look forward to? And why would they bring, we used to have at my sort of different youth clubs, they'd bring in an ex-criminal to come and speak to us. I don't have plans on becoming, why? He's come out of prison, he's rehabilitated, fantastic, good for him. But why does that affect us young people who are 15, 16? Why not bring a successful person? Why not bring a doctor? A doctor, or a celebrity, or a lawyer. Why not bring someone who's made sort of success, who's from a similar background to us? That would be of more benefit than a random person who's rehabilitated to life. That's good for him, but it doesn't. And that's often a narrative that we have to deal with as young people.
You've mentioned also that you're an avid supporter for like organizations and youth clubs and sports clubs even. And how do these play a role in a healthy society?
So, just to put it out there, I'm a Chelsea fan. So Chelsea is my team.
They're doing not that bad this season.
Not that bad. This season, not that bad. Yeah, I thought you were going to say bad. No, they're doing not that bad. They're doing relatively well this season. We've had some good games, new manager, some new players. So it's all slowly working out. So I try to go to watch a Chelsea match when I can get a ticket. It's very hard to get tickets. When I get a ticket, I can go watch Chelsea matches, which is quite nice. But the role of sports and activity in terms of a healthy lifestyle is essential, especially for young people. They always say if we're trying to combat sort of unhealthy eating or unhealthy lifestyles, or people on the computer too much or gaming and that sort of thing, sports is the remedy. Sports is what's out there to counteract all these negative stuff. So it's important that people take part in a sport, and it can be table tennis, it can be football, it can be basketball, it can be badminton, and it can be running. People are athletic, they want to run, they can run, it's not a problem. So it's, again, how do we pull out this talent from young people? How do we pull out these skills and get them to expand on it? When does running move from a hobby to a professional sport? When does that move from a professional sport to a full-time job? And this links me back to these opportunities. It might be a young person who's very gifted at football. They might be really good. How do we get them to that next step? How do we get them? Because a lot of the time, unfortunately, and this is all over the world, it's who you know when you want to get to places. Who you know, essentially, that's how it is. So what can we do to help young people who are talented, maybe have that special gift? And even those who don't, what can we do to help push them, encourage them, that healthy activity and a healthy lifestyle is the way forward?
I think also a problem with youth nowadays is that we don't want to try, as I said, because of fear of rejection or other sort of fears.
True. Absolutely true.
So you would heavily encourage them to try at least once, would you?
Yeah, I would 100%, because you don't know if you like it until you try it. That's the rule of life. And
if they get rejected, what should they do after that rejection?
Carry on. And it's, don't get me wrong, it's really hard. When you're rejected, it's really hard. I've had rejections when it comes to applying for jobs or stuff like that. It's normal. It's part of life. That's how things are. And you can feel sorry for yourself sometimes, and you can get. Don't get me wrong. I feel sorry. I'm not saying people to hold their emotions. Feel sorry for yourself. You're upset. It's natural. You're allowed to be upset. You don't have to be all strong and it doesn't upset me. Things are allowed to upset you. It's normal human behavior. But then it's, how do you get back up? How do you come back from that? Are you going to then go and try all these other things, or is that where you call it quits and you give up? If you do give up, are you going to start something else? That's what you have to think about. If you change your mind, start something else then. Keep yourself busy. For me, it's never about just sitting at home. It's always go out and do something. Even if you're just walking up and down your street and talking to people. Be social. Do something. Don't stay clenched up in your house, essentially, or your home.
Do you think it's culturally important to stay up to date with history?
Oh, absolutely, because as we know, history repeats itself. So it's very important, especially for young people, to understand what's gone on in the past and use that to help facilitate the decisions they make for the future. Because everything that's happening across the world has been done somewhere before. And that's the facts. That's how things are.
And speaking about books, would you recommend any book? Has there been any book that changed Hamza?
That changed Hamza?
Yeah.
Ooh. No, do you know what? There was one book that I always remember, and I only read it. This is when I was in secondary school. So I think I was year 7 or year 8. It was a kid's book, a children's book, but it was by an author called Terry Pratchett. And it was called Nation. It was about a kid. He went on an island, and I only read it. We used to have this thing in school where the bigger the book you read, the more points you get. It was like a weird little system. I only read it because it was a really big book. The words were quite spaced out, but it was a big book, and I thought, 300 pages, fantastic, I'm going to get lots of points now. But that book stayed with me just because of the journey the character went on, what happened after, and it's very sort of fading away from my memory because it was a long time ago. But that book always comes to mind. There was another series of books when I was a child called Cherub, and they were like kids who were agents and stuff. So my school really pushed us to read books a lot. We used to have a nice little library in my school. But in terms of adult books, actually I can mention there's one that I found out I was in recently, which I was really happy about, and that's a book called Charles III. I should have memorized the author's name. I feel really bad now. But it's called Charles III, and it's the king's biography. So it's a biography about the king. And in the book I mentioned, there's a couple of lines about me and how I met the king. And I was like, I only found this out like a month ago. I was like 2 weeks ago. I was like, wow. I was like, I can't believe I'm in the book. But
that's how you know you've made it.
Yeah. When you see yourself in a book and you see yourself referenced, I'm like, that's pretty cool. And I went and bought it straight away. And I messaged the author on Twitter, and I was like, thank you so much. Like, it's really nice of you to mention me. But so read the king's biography, and you see me in there somewhere.
And I guess on biographies, do you ever see yourself in the future in creating a biography about your life?
I always wanted to write a book because I thought it would be good fun. It's just the time and the effort, and it's a lot of dedication. I used to always say to myself, if I do a page a day, I'll be done in a year. That's 365. I'll be done. 1 year I'll be complete. But then it's almost... And when I was Lord Mayor, I wanted to keep a diary. I really wanted to. I tried at the start, but because it was so busy, I never had the time to do it in the end. But maybe one day I'll write a little... Yeah. I think it'll be cool. It'll be cool to see my name in there.
It would. I would read it.
Thank you so
much. And I'd buy it if there were a few sentences
so
of this podcast.
I might do a very short book. I'll include the podcast. I do like the Mr. Men books, like the tiny little ones. But no, inshallah, why not? One day we'll see. Why not?
Maybe also like a televised series of your life.
Now you're asking for a lot.
Too far.
If you know someone, call me. I know we can set it up. But it's but I think there is a lot. And it's only when I get older where I think I'll see properly. But there's a lot to learn, hopefully, for other young people from my experiences and what I've been able to do over the years. Because I'm 25 now, so I'm still young. I'm not old. I feel a little bit old sometimes, but I'm not too old. And hopefully it's only onwards and up from here to see what happens next.
Speaking about like adults stopping young groups of people, what's your opinion on like adults treating you young people as like babies and talking to them in baby language and expecting them not to understand and not to be actually motivated to create such things?
I think it's really patronizing, to be honest with you. A lot of the time, if older people or anyone in general speaks down to you, it's not a very nice feeling. You feel quite small. You feel like you don't have much power, much influence. So I would always say that's not the way. That really isn't the way forward. dialogue has to be had, conversations need to be had, and I think they just need to understand each other better. I think generations need to understand each other better. A lot of the older people you see on the news or the TV, they say, "Oh, young people have it easy. They got everything. There's no stress." That's not the case. That's not true. It's we can flip it around and say older people had it easy. Oh, everything was cheaper back then. Everything was more easier to afford. Life was better. The air was fresher. Everything was healthy. And it's like we can flip it around as well. So it's really important to have that dialogue to see where that common ground is. And there is a lot of common ground. Honestly, there really is.
I'm honestly interested to know more about your like Moroccan identity, and I think the viewers too. So I guess, you know, being British Moroccan, how or do you have day-to-day practices that are Moroccan?
I have Moroccan tea quite a lot. I drink a lot of Moroccan tea. I love my Moroccan tea. My favourite food is, we say, couscous. That's my number one, absolute number one favourite food. Yeah, best Moroccan dish. I think my auntie's making some today, so I might go visit her and have some later on. In terms of in my home, I have Moroccan sofas. They're called steaded, so it's like the wooden bench and the mattresses on top. So I've got Moroccan living room. I have all the Moroccan sort of decor. I love Moroccan. Just love Moroccan. I love the Moroccan style. I love the decor. I love the patterns. I love the decorations. At home, I've got all my like traditional Arabic ayats that you have sort of surrounding the house. I got all of that's not really Moroccan, it's Islamic, but I have that all over my home. Yeah, I don't know. I got like Moroccan. I don't know. I see it as my life. I don't really think about it too much, but everything is normal for me. That's normal life. That's not Moroccan or British. It's my normal. That's my heritage. That's who I am. I've got some Moroccan ties that I wear at home as well sometimes. But Moroccan clothes, lots of Moroccan clothes that I wear. Whether it's a jaleba or kandora or something like that, I can put that on. It's not a problem when I go to the mosque. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Moroccan food, Moroccan drinks, Moroccan sweets. I love Moroccan sweets.
Everything to do with Morocco.
Everything to do with Morocco. Very nice sweets.
Visit Morocco.
Visit Morocco. Honestly, Morocco is a very nice country. Everyone should go to Morocco. It's a brilliant place. But yeah, no, I'm like I said, I'm very, very proud that that's part of my identity and part of who I am.
And speaking about like both identities, how do you balance them? Do you like one day wake up and feel more British, the next more Moroccan, and the next just none of them?
No, for me, I'm always a bit of both. To be honest with you, I think I don't know. Sometimes you feel more Moroccan, and sometimes you feel more British. If I go to like a Moroccan event, then obviously I feel a bit more Moroccan. If I go to a big Buckingham Palace event, I feel more British. And it's like, I don't know, for me and I think for my family, and for most people who have sort of a dual ethnicity or dual nationality, it's a bit of both. It's not one or the other. You're always British Moroccan, you're always British this or British that, or it's part of who you are. So I think that's how I feel.
Okay, so this question might be a bit tough. You don't have to answer it.
That's fine.
But while you're talking, I don't know why, I just imagined if Morocco was playing against England football.
No.
You know, who would you cheer for? Or would you cheer for any?
That's a horrible question.
Feel free not to answer.
Gotta stay neutral. I think I've got to stay neutral. I would... the thing is, England at the moment, not a very great football team. They lost yesterday as well against Greece, 2-1. It wasn't very good. Morocco has been improving, as we saw in the World Cup in Qatar. It was amazing. It was. I wish I could go back in time and live it all over again and go and visit and watch Morocco in the stadium. But it was. That's still one thing I need to do on my checklist. I need to go watch a live Moroccan football match. So Morocco is improving quite a lot, as we've seen. So if England were to play Morocco, it'll be quite tricky. I'll be leaning maybe slightly to the underdogs, because Morocco will always be the underdogs. They won't be the ones who are expected to win. And I think we naturally go towards the underdogs. But honestly, I'd be content with whoever wins is fine. As long as that team eventually wins the tournament, I'm fine. I don't want England to win and then they lose the next game, or like Morocco to win and they lose the next game. No, they have to win the tournament. If they're going to beat one of my teams, they have to win the tournament.
So you feel represented in any team winning? Like if England won, you'd be happy. Morocco won, you'd be happy.
Fine. I'll be absolutely fine. I don't know, happy. I'll be fine. I'll be okay. I'll be a bit sad, but a bit happy. So it'll be balanced. It'll be quite okay.
And moving away from your Moroccan identity, let's move to your Muslim identity. How do you balance Islam and your achievements or your roles in public service?
For me, I never separate my religion from who I am. It's not like one day I'm Muslim. No. The religion is, I adapt the work to fit with the religion, as opposed to trying to adapt the religion to fit with the work. So we used to have lots of things, for example, where there would be, I don't know, I'd be working the whole day. I wouldn't have a single break. It'd be non-stop. I'd go home, I'd catch up on my prayers. It's very straightforward. I go home, I catch up on my prayers, I ask for forgiveness, and that's it. We move on to the next day. And that's how I would sort of take my days on at work. If I have time off, great. If I can make time off, even better. Because that's what some people forget, is if you have the ability, like Salah only takes like 5 minutes, sometimes less than 5 minutes. You only wudu, you go pray 5 minutes. My team, I would say to them, I used to always have a prayer mat in my office when I was Lord Mayor. So I'd always say to them, maybe at this time I might be busy. And they fine, understand that, it's no problem. They can. I'm not saying to them to change their life to adapt to me. My life is my life. When it's time for me to go and pray, or time for me to go and do something, I want to try my best to go and do it. And that's how it is. I always say to people, and I always explain to colleagues, especially English colleagues, that in Islam, prayer isn't optional. Salah is it's not a choice, it's fard. It means you have to do it. There's no if, maybes, there's no ifs and buts. You have to do it. So sometimes they're very surprised, or they'll see me and they'll think, oh, what's he doing? And I say, I'm busy. They just give me 2 minutes, guys, and I'll be back with you. And for most things, it's completely fine. But Islam has helped. It's helped guide me, because a lot of the time I'd be worried or stressed out, and as long as you can take out a couple minutes from your day, you're able to really reflect properly. You're able to breathe in. It's almost, I'm not going to say meditation, but Salah gives you that sense of
fulfillment, maybe?
Fulfillment, yeah, a little bit of peace, a little bit of, because you're only focused on Salah, you're not focused on other stuff. Even if it bothers you before, you sort of cancel it out, you pray, and then you start to feel a bit more. It's like a pause. You've gone somewhere and you've come back. You've just paused. You've taken a little break from all the stuff that's troubling you. And I was quite privileged. I think one of the biggest things when I was Lord Mayor is people would see me and say, "Oh, you're the first Muslim Lord Mayor. You're a Muslim who's Lord Mayor. This has never happened in Westminster before, and very few boroughs have actually had a Muslim mayor of any sort." So for them to actually see that and understand that is interesting, because like even Westminster Abbey, for example, we used to do a lot of events at Westminster Abbey, which is a big church right next to Parliament. Massive events take place there, and I remember speaking to the Dean. So the Dean is the person who runs the Abbey, and we had a service that was going on. It's for the Lord Mayor. They normally celebrate the Lord Mayor. They do a big service, and they said, "Oh, which chapter do you want to read from the Bible?" I said, "Oh no, I can't. I can read the chapter from the Quran." I said, "It's very similar." There's lots of very similar parts. There's lots of parts that we can use. And then after going back and forth a little bit, we found a part that was the same in the Bible and the same in the Quran. And we thought, okay, we can read this paragraph. It's just a reading that the Lord Mayor has to do. And they adapt to that, and it's fine. But spreading the word of Islam, spreading the knowledge around what a Muslim is and what the Muslims do, I think I had the best opportunity that when I was Lord Mayor. My chaplain, for example, so chaplain is a religious person who sort of stays with you, was my local imam. So my local imam was my chaplain. This was the first time they had an imam do a speech or do an event or make dua before we do something. Or this for them is brand new. This is brand new stuff. So I was able to bring that and show people, look, being Muslim isn't a weird thing. It's not a crazy. It's a completely normal way of life. I think there's a big misconception sometimes that Muslims are very different, or they can't mix, or they can't do this, or they can't integrate in culture, or they can't work with each other. And that's not the case. We're normal people. It sounds weird even saying it, but there's a lot of people out there who think it's some conspiracy going on, but it's not. And luckily I was able to help promote that message with people that I work with, people that I know, people I interacted with, and just say to them that this is, even like during Ramadan, I had the first Lord Mayors, we had a big iftar event in City Hall in the parlour, which is again first time they had it in the Westminster Council building. I got invited by lots of different communities, whether it was Bangladeshi community or Moroccan community or Egyptian community. They invite me to the iftar events as Lord Mayor, and that's the first time they've been able to do that, because previously the Lord Mayor wouldn't want to go. He wouldn't want to go to have iftar. He's not fasting, so for him it doesn't matter. Or even like Wembley Stadium, we had iftar at Wembley Stadium or Trafalgar Square. So these were things I was able to do as a Muslim Lord Mayor. So I feel quite privileged and quite lucky on that front to be able to have had that opportunity.
And I'm so thankful that we do get this representation, because honestly, like what you said, you'd expect people to think that we're normal people, but they're full of misconceptions, honestly.
If you see the news, it's like it's the news, they always paint us as the villains. We're always the dangerous people, we're always this, we're always that, and it's like, it's not the case. It really, really isn't the case.
And I would love to end on this note, but I just have one more last question. Where do you see yourself in the future? 5 to 10 years, what is Hamza doing? National level, what is he doing?
It's tricky because I spent the whole conversation saying that I don't think about the future. But no, for me, inshallah, it's to become a member of parliament. So that's my next step. That's my big next step. Obviously, next election's in 2029. So we just had one obviously this year, so it's 5 years. So I'll be 29 at the next election. Inshallah, that's my big push to become elected, to get into parliament, to become an MP. For now, it's trying to see what more I can do on the local level, what more I can do in the council, in the local authority. What's the next steps? We've got our council elections in 2026, so about a year and a half time. I'll see how they go, see what we're doing, see what things we can do to improve, hopefully. But the big future step is definitely to get into parliament. That is my number one big thing. I love the idea of being able to help more people, because when you're an MP you have a bigger area that you're responsible for. So to help more people, to make more of a difference, especially on a national level, because then you can influence government policy, you can make government changes. You can do a lot of stuff locally, don't get me wrong. Sometimes you have more power as a councillor than an MP, because you make decisions that affect people's daily life, whether it's the parking, whether it's the rubbish collection. This is something that the council does, not the MPs, not parliament. But then with parliament, it's national legislation, it's international legislation. I also enjoy the ambassadorial world. So all these sort of ambassadors and people who do international sort of government politics, and that's why I studied sort of global affairs at uni, because I find it quite interesting. I think to be a diplomat is a very interesting career path, but I'm sort of slightly taking it from the other side in terms of wanting to be a politician and seeing what I can do as I already am a politician, to be a bigger politician, and then to become an MP. So that's my 5 to 10 year plan, get into parliament.
Perfect, and I hope to see you there, inshallah. And I just want to thank you so much for coming on this podcast and enlightening us with your stories, advice. I'm sure they will be a benefit, not only to me, but to the audience watching. And to the audience, thank you so much for joining us and reaching this far. And stay tuned for another podcast of حدثنا.